Thank you, President Gattell, and good afternoon, everyone. Also, thank you to Provost Pollywall, Board Chair Wilson, members of the Board of Trustees, graduates, family, and special guests who are here today. Again, I'm Ted Shallcross, President and CEO of Amica Insurance, right down the road here in Lincoln, Rhode Island. You may not know me, but I'm hopeful that you know Amica. We've had a wonderful partnership with Bryant for many years now. The Amica Center for Career Education is located right here on this beautiful campus. We're a presenting partner of the Bryant President's Golf Tournament. And last, but certainly not least, and maybe what I'm most proud of, we've been the platinum sponsor for the Bryant Women's Summit for over a decade and a half. So I've thought a lot about what I wanted to say today, and I settled on two guiding principles. Be brief and try not to be boring. I promise you I'll try to do my best to stick to both of these this afternoon. Okay, so I want to talk about just three things that I believe can help you all to have a successful life. Notice that I said successful life and not successful career. But as I'll speak about in a moment, the two can certainly go hand in hand. And the good news is, I think this advice is quite simple. The bad news is, it probably took me more than 20 years to fully embrace them myself, hence why I'd love to share them with you all today. So without further ado, number one, use your superpower. And yes, whether you know it or not, each and every one of you has a superpower. Number two, be the authentic leader that only you can be. And number three, and this might be the toughest one, let your personal hardships launch you to become the best version of the person you are always meant to be. They sound simple enough, right? But what do they all mean? Let's start with number one. Use your superpower. Each and every one of us here today has at least one superpower. This is something that you're very good at. It's probably something that comes really easily to you and is really difficult for others. When you learn what your superpower is and use it every day, you'll go further than you could ever imagine. Your superpower allows you to play to your strengths. Now you may say, I'm not sure what my strengths are. One way to find your strengths is by using a tool called StrengthsFinder, which was developed by Gallup Consulting. The basic principle behind this tool is that there are 34 separate and distinct strengths among all human beings. The tool ranks all of your individual strengths 1 through 34. And through data and through research, they've determined that if you want to be great at something, you should focus exclusively on your top 5 strengths. Studies have proven that people who use their strengths every day are happier and they're healthier than those that don't. In fact, they're 6 times as likely to be engaged in their job and 3 times as likely to report having an excellent quality of life. There's a great joke that if most middle managers in corporate America had LeBron James as their employee, they'd sit him down and they'd say, you know, you're really good at basketball, but you stink at baseball. We need to focus on baseball. That's all wrong, right? Forget about baseball. Let's try to make you into the greatest basketball player that ever lived. It's human nature that when you're self-reflecting on your abilities, you'll naturally think about the things you're not as strong at, and you won't focus on the things you're good at. And unfortunately, when you focus on your weaknesses, the best outcome is that you can maybe become mediocre at something. By focusing on your strengths and finding your superpower, you can become great. It will also be an easier process and something you'll genuinely enjoy doing. My first piece of advice to you, life is short. Try to become great. Figure out your strengths and use your superpower. Okay, number 2, be the authentic leader that only you can be. There are pieces of who you are that make you uniquely you. And it's these personal parts of yourself that will make you the leader others want to follow. No matter where you are in your career, you should think about who you want to be as a leader. And it needs to be authentic, it needs to be real. And make no mistake, you now all have a master's degree from one of the top schools in the country. You will be leaders. Throughout your life, people will probably ask you which leader you admire the most. Common answers to this question are business leaders like Steve Jobs and Jeff Bezos, or heroic leaders like Nelson Mandela or Mother Teresa. They're all very admirable, and there is much we can learn from them to guide our growth and our style. I encourage you to remember, however, that you're not them and they're not you. You've probably heard this before. It's a favorite saying of mine. No one can beat you at being you. You need to think about the things that make you, you. And that is the key to becoming the authentic leader that only you can be. Okay, number 3, final topic, and maybe most important. Allow your personal hardships to launch you to become the best version of the person who you were always meant to be. We don't talk about this enough. The face we show the world on Instagram is the face that smiles. It's the face that's having a great time on vacation. It's the face that just scored that dream job. But the reality that we all know too well is that we all experience trials along the way. And these trials can either defeat us or they can shape us into the person we're destined to become. So now, if you'll allow me, I'd like to share my personal story. So I'm sure like many of us here, I grew up about as middle class could be. My dad worked in IT. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, basically taking care of me. The jobs that I had growing up, I delivered newspapers for the Providence Journal after school and on weekend mornings. I worked for a now defunct grocery store called Almax. I would take the shopping carts from the outside, bring them back inside, and go back outside, take the carts back inside, so on and so forth for 4 hours a day. I also worked at U-Haul when I was home from college, trying to earn extra money for tuition or just extra spending money for when I was back up at school. I'm a first-generation college graduate, the first one in my entire family to ever graduate from college, something, as you can imagine, my parents were very proud of, and the biggest blessing in my entire life, my wife Shannon, and our 2 boys, Teddy and Gethin, who are here with us today. Now, like everyone here, I've also had my share of trials in my life as well. My mom, who as an only child was my closest confidant, was diagnosed with breast cancer when I was 16 years old, and she passed away exactly 1 month after I graduated from college. And before Shannon, I was married to my wife Susan, who was diagnosed with cancer at age 29 and passed away at age 33. I tell you all this not just because it's an interesting story. I tell you all this because when I think about words that I associate with my authentic leadership, resiliency, empathy, humbleness, those aren't just words to me. That's really how I've lived my entire life. So when I think about my story and how I judge success is by being a role model for my kids, giving back to the community, being a servant leader to each and every one of the thousands of employees who work at Amica. My advice to you, no matter how busy life gets, is to try and be intentional each day on the type of person and leader you want to be. Another one of my favorite sayings, life is a wonderful struggle. Let all the good things that have happened in your life as well as all the hardships that each and every one of us has faced, determine who you are and how you want to lead. Okay, to recap, number one, find out what your superpower is, what you're good at, what comes naturally to you, and embrace it. Trust me, you will be able to use this to go further than you ever could have imagined. Number two, be the authentic leader only you can be. There's a reason why modern leadership doesn't have one set of criteria for what makes the best leaders. It's because the very best leaders realize they have to be themselves to win both the hearts and the minds of those that they're leading. And number three, instead of letting your hardships defeat you, let those hard times shape you and mold you into the leader that you are about to become. If you do all these things, I'm certain that you'll have a successful career, and more importantly, you'll have an abundant life. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to speak with you all today. I'll leave you with one more of my favorite sayings. If people aren't laughing at your dreams, you're not dreaming big enough. You now have a graduate degree from one of the best schools in the entire country. There is no limit to where your journey can take you. Go out and be great. Thank you.